To understand the battlefield, it's always good to have a bird's eye view. Canada's military arranged that with the Dutch for a flyover of Taliban strongholds, including the region where a decisive battle was won by NATO last month. By all accounts, Operation Medusa drove a powerful Taliban advance out of the Panjwai district and back into the mountains. It was a major strategic victory for NATO.
It's pretty obvious how ferocious the fighting was. It drove just about every Afghan out of the 20-kilometer area that was once the Taliban stronghold. And it's going to take a lot of convincing to move them back over the couple of months that the insurgency is, in fact, defeated. Canadian forces have decided to establish a new permanent base here to convince them of that. One of the Americans who commanded that battle is with us today, Colonel Steve Williams.
Yeah, and people in Canada have to understand is, you know, in the U.S., we've been fighting this war for about 4 years. Canadian troops have just really gotten into this war. So you cannot say that Canadian soldiers don't know how to fight, because I think they're great guys, and they've got the intensity and the aggressiveness that you need. So I've been impressed.
With this loss, the Taliban has reverted back to the tactics of an insurgency, borrowing ideas from jihadists in Iraq and the Middle East, suicide bombers and rocket attacks. But even with the largest strategic victory, the second most senior commander of NATO forces in Afghanistan admits the overall battle right now is at best a draw.
As of today, is this a war that NATO and its forces are winning?
I think it's evenly balanced. There's a lot of water that will flow under the bridge over the next couple of years.
I don't need to tell you that the history of armies battling insurgencies isn't necessarily a good one for the armies. Do you have Vietnam? Iraq has been very difficult. Can you win here?
We're still in early days, but you know, this could go on for 2 to 3 years before we achieve a sufficient decisive event to go entirely our way.
We're now flying over one of the areas that worries a lot of people. This is kind of the wild west of Afghanistan. The northeastern border of Pakistan is only a couple of kilometers from here. It may well be where the battle will move during the winter months. Just across the mountains in Pakistan are where the Taliban and Al-Qaeda organize many of the strikes which kill our soldiers. Now, the Pakistan government has just turned over governing of Waziristan to tribal elders, believing they may be able to control the Taliban best. That is a big gamble, because it could just as easily create a safe haven for the Taliban and Al-Qaeda to operate worldwide with impunity.
I mean, you could send a whole infantry battalion down here and you still really wouldn't probably scratch the surface.
I'm worried that we've taken on an impossible mission and that we're using the absolute wrong measurements to try to find success in this. And if we're using the wrong measurements, we're going to keep coming to the wrong conclusions. That, gee, we killed a lot of people today, we must be winning this war.
And yet, killing a lot more Taliban fighters is frankly what the military hopes will convince the peaceful people of Afghanistan to support the government they elected, not the Taliban.
The population will then look who is the strongest Taliban coalition or Afghan National Army, and if they will follow, it is their culture, they will follow he who is the strongest.
The risk is that more force from foreigners could elevate the Taliban from guerrilla fighters to populist heroes.
These are the last structures of the Canadian front line. From this point forward and out, Canadian troops are literally living out in the open. There are no tents, no shelter, and certainly no chance of a Thanksgiving meal. And that's where Colonel Lewis went next, about as far into the Afghan countryside as NATO troops regularly travel. Most of the men have been living and fighting out here for more than a month solid. They are weary and hardened. Colonel Lewis tries his best to warm them up.
People are starting to understand what you guys have been going through. I mean, what, it's been 40 straight days, pretty close to 40 straight days now of combat. I mean, this is what your grandfathers and great-grandfathers did.
So far from home and so disconnected from Thanksgiving, we thought any token of Canada might be appreciated. So we carried with us a few Canadian candies and the thing they really crave, something to read from home.
The Canadian edition of Maxim. There he is.
Right on.
They've been involved in some of the fiercest fighting Canadian troops have encountered since the Korean War. What they seem to want to know is whether Canadians are thankful, whether their sacrifices are being noticed.
Say hi to my wife and 2 kids, Carol and Alexander and Damon. I miss them quite a bit. I'm coming home pretty soon.
Anybody else want to say hi to home?
Yeah, my wife Lori and my 2 girls, Alexis and Shayla. Shayla's birthday was just the 2nd of October.
Happy birthday to her.
Well, happy birthday, Shayla, and Alexis' birthday is coming up the 24th, so happy birthday, girls.
For Colonel Lewis, this morale-boosting trip was important personally as well. He was once one of those men in the fields, one of those men who were thankful for important things.
What are you guys thankful for?
Still be alive.
The vehicle Trooper Mark Wilson was in struck a hidden mine or bomb on Saturday. He was helping to build a road in the dangerous Panjwai district. In our 5 days of broadcasting from Afghanistan, his was one of 3 deaths, all members of the Royal Canadian Dragoons, all killed helping to construct that road. The weight of the loss obvious on the Dragoons' leader. So you can't help but wonder, is it worth it? To look for meaning in those deaths, I wanted to see that road. Military escort is the only safe way there. The farmers working the fields are often hired Taliban fighters, taking aim at a chopper.
3-2, this is ABS 3-3. We're departing GPW now for your location. Send Lockstad over.
It doesn't look much like a road yet. It's almost 3 kilometers of cleared dirt only military vehicles can traverse. Not the smoothest ride, and the LAV needs heat-sensing equipment to look for Taliban fighters who might be hidden in the vines and brush. But someday, it could help Afghan farmers get their produce to market faster.
You know, in the end, it's going to be straight, and the purpose behind it being straight is that you don't need too many troops to control it.
It is also going to be a football field wide, so anyone traveling the road will be able to see threats on the edge. The Canadian military men doing the back-breaking work are called sappers, and this troop has the reputation of the most dangerous unit to be near. Their call sign is prom night, because if you're with them, action is guaranteed.
So how many of you here have been involved in an incident?
All of us. Not all of us.
Everybody here has had something go on.
Yeah.
3 deaths in a week, 16 wounded.
I was involved with the friendly fire incident with the A-10. I received 2 pieces of shrapnel to my back. That was about 3 kilometers south of here at the town of Pajmal. I was air evac'd. I had about a day's rest, and then I was right back out here. Minor wounds.
Here's another challenge. In the coolness of the evening, many Afghan farmers come out and start doing their digging in their fields. It only takes one of them to accept a bribe from the Taliban to slip an explosive device into the earth. Meaning by morning, one of the most dangerous jobs in the Canadian Army is running that bulldozer.
Pretty much frightened every day, especially in the dozer and stuff like that. Because really we're the main, if anybody wants to take anything out, it's going to be what's making the progress.
2 unexploded grenades are found while we're here. They're detonated off in the distance. These men have been out in the dirt, open and vulnerable, for 37 straight days now.
Yeah, we'll get her done eventually.
We want to get it done.
Yeah, you got to get it completed, eh?
Not that they don't have doubts. Lieutenant Nicholas Forsyth suffered burns in the attacks this week.
You look inside yourself and, you know, you have to sort of question, you question it yourself, of course. You say, why am I here? You know, these people don't seem to be helpful to me, or they don't seem to want to help me.
But he, like the other road builders honoring their dead today, have even greater resolve now to complete it.
I'm hoping that that road can be recognized as a symbol of the Dragoon sacrifice in that specific area.